Fantastic. Alrighty. So welcome everybody to this month's Open Day. I'm so glad to be back. I had a wonderful trip to the UK, and thank you so much to Tim for covering last month's Open Day and hosting so fantastically. I would like to welcome you all to the first session of the Open Day and welcome everyone who is in the room. I have put the link to this meeting in the YouTube live chat, so if you'd like to join in the room, please feel free to do so. This specific session is about helping Penny, who's a PhD candidate and doing amazing work on remote sensing, aerial photography, satellite photography, and the health of oceans, seas, and mass whale strandings. So I was fascinated as soon as I got her email. So we would really like to help her out using Qgis and open source projects to help her with her PhD, and she will have a lot more information on what she's doing. So I'm going to hand over to Penny. Over to you.
Thank you, Amy, and thanks everyone for joining today. So I'm going to share my screen, so hopefully you can all see this now.
Perfect.
On my presentation. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I kind of wanted to come to everybody because I've got some questions with regards to using Qgis for my PhD, and I'm hoping with the community that's online today that we can talk about those and just to introduce you to what the project that I'm doing is all about. So you can see here my project title is Using Remote Sensing Tools to Study Ocean Health and Whale Strandings, and this is part of the British Antarctic Survey and University of Edinburgh. And this isn't new. There's lots of people doing amazing projects using satellites for wildlife. But like when I say it's not new, it's a novel tool for studying wildlife, but there's a lot of people doing it, and there's lots of different wildlife that's being studied. So you can see on the screen here, we've got people out there studying whales. People are looking for elephants, albatross, seals, penguins, walrus. So there's loads and loads of wildlife that are being studied. And my project is one of the few that are taking place at the moment. And so I kind of wanted to introduce you just quickly to why we're doing this project before I ask you about the questions. And this video, I think, captures what I'm about to say, which is that whales themselves are hugely important to our oceans. But as you can see from this video, they sort of inhabit these really remote locations, and they make it a real challenge to study. And they're threatened, so we really need to understand, you know, what these threats are doing and the potential impacts in the future. And so this is where strandings come in. So if any of you know the story of the canary in the coal mine, so the sentinel species, if there's something that goes wrong, it's an indicator that, you know, people should get out of the mines. Well, the same happens with cetaceans. Cetaceans are the sentinels of the ocean. And so when we have these mass strandings, they are almost an early warning sign that something is not right. And so they're a really valuable tool to study. And I just wanted to bring this map to your attention. So you can see from here, I'm just going to highlight with my mouse here. There's lots of areas of coastline around the world that are actually not monitored. And these are typically remote coastlines. Maybe they're areas of complex coastlines themselves, like fjord systems, or geopolitically remote coastlines. So there's lots of areas that we need to upscale monitoring. And you can see that the monitoring typically coincides with areas where they're highly populated coastlines. And so these remote coastlines areas can be studied using very high resolution satellites. And so we're talking about satellites here that can see sub-meter resolution. And we're using about 50 to 30 centimeters resolution. So they're really, really high detail. So you can see here, there's this nice little picture of what a whale stranding might look like from space. And this has been done before. So my colleagues here, Peter, Vreni was the first person to try using satellites for looking at whale strandings using satellite imagery. Peter then expanded on that and further looked in this area. So this area was in Chile, and it was the largest known mass stranding of baleen whales in the world. And so they were able to count and detect strandings using very high resolution satellites. And I just wanted to bring you back to this map. And the reason why is because this is where I think it's going to be important for using Qgis. So I mentioned that it's highly populated coastlines that has the monitoring. But what you also might notice is generally the areas that don't have the monitoring also coincide with lower GDP areas. And so really, if we want to make this a locally sustaining long-term monitoring program, using satellites, what we really need to do is make this accessible. So we want to use open source software. And what typically has happened so far is a lot of the studies have used ArcGIS, which, as you know, has monetary value to have to use. And so we really would like to use Qgis. And so this is where I'm asking for your help. As I say, we want to increase collaboration and make this long-term, locally sustaining around the globe. And so this is where I want to ask your help. So I need your help, please, with the first aspect of what I'm trying to do is how we can PanSharpen imagery to use Qgis. So when you get the imagery, you get a very high resolution panchromatic image and still high resolution, but not as high resolution multispectral image. And we need to bring those together to make one very high resolution multispectral image. And so I guess my first question is, I would really like to ask the Qgis community, what is your favorite or go-to PanSharpen tool that is free and open source when using Qgis, if people already use it? And my awareness is of Orfeo Toolboox, and is that what people use? So yeah, that's my first question, Amy.
I am muted. Thank you so much, Penny. Thank you. I will then put that question out to our experts. What is your favorite tool for pan-sharpening images?
Before we get to that,
Sure.
maybe Tim wants to interject here, but maybe for the benefit of people watching, like describing the process of pan sharpening and this image processing and what this particular tool does. So basically, when you've got your raster data, it's a set of grids, and each of those grids or pixels, have a value, and we have image formats and raster data formats, which store multiple different bands of data. So you can have RGB typically for images like aerial images and so on. You can also have things like your infrared band and so on top of that. And then the process of pan sharpening is essentially taking a higher resolution image. So you'll have something like just, it's just what they call panchromatic. I think the terminology comes from certain types of film that were used. But basically you have like a high resolution black and white image, and then you want to overlay and kind of merge the values from that onto your multispectral data, which could be, you could take RGB imagery and then pan sharpen lower resolution infrared onto it. But in most cases, what you want to do is take high resolution, like black and white imagery, and then like add your like full color or multispectral data on top of that to help with your remote sensing capabilities. This obviously makes sense when you get into the field of image sensors and so on, and what kind of like radiation they can pick up. And, when you're working with satellites and you're dealing with atmospheric refraction and all sorts of fancy things, the accessibility to these various data sources is what changes. So the question is, how do we do that with open source? Hopefully that makes sense. And my internet is working, hopefully.
Yes,
Amy,
Charlie, we can hear you. Thank you so much for the background. That was
Great.
great. I totally understand what's going on, and if I understand, we're going well. Tim, you're muted.
I want to follow Charlie's approach as well and ask Penny what you've already tried, because we could just tell you a bunch of answers, but it might be nice to know what you've done and also the data that you're playing with. Is there anything special about it? Can you share the data that we can have a look at it even now in the session? Or
yeah, absolutely. So actually, yeah, this is probably a good question I can come back to at the end. So far I have tried Orfeo Toolbox. So that's why I was hoping to ask if there's anything beyond this. But yeah, I can certainly, let me exit full view and I can open up. So I've got here an image. I'll just zoom out. Okay, so yeah, I've put in this image earlier today. So we've got the panchromatic layer. If I turn off the current pan-sharpened image, so we have the panchromatic layer here. We have the multispectral layer, which will hopefully show up shortly. Maybe. There we go.
Live demos always work perfectly, just so you know.
There we go. So yeah, we've got the multispectral image, and then I have used the Orfeo Toolbox, and I used the bundle to perfect sensor. I used the RCS at this point to do this particular layer. I am currently trying to run something for the Bayesian, but it's taken a very, very long time. So this is one of my questions. But yeah, between what I've basically done is put on the slide some extra questions that run through the challenges I've had. So the first kind of question I had coming up to trying to use this Orfeo Toolbox was actually, I'm using here 3.16, but that's because when I used 3.22, which was here, I noticed that when you try to use the processing toolbox, the OTB doesn't come up as a provider. And I just wondered why that might be, and if there's a newer way to bring in Orfeo Toolbox in the newer versions of Qgis.
So if I remember correctly, 3.16 was still on the old OSGeo packaging system, wasn't it? Before Jürgen made a bunch of changes.
Yeah. They dropped 32-bit support, and then there was a bunch of changes to the OSGeo packaging.
So it could be that as a side effect, the OTB got dropped out there. So while we're chatting, I'm going to go on a nerd hotline back to Jürgen, who's the packager, and find out if he remembers any specific reason why OTB got dropped out of it.
Yeah, okay. I had a look in the 3.22 sort of online help, and it suggests that this still should be the way to load in. So that was one of my first questions.
Online in the YouTube chat, Aaron says that I use 3.24 and the OTB is in the processing providers.
Okay. Perfect. So yeah, I'll give that a go once I come offline and see if I update to 3.24. If that.
But that's where Penny is right now. She's in the providers on the screen.
But Aaron was saying 3.24 apparently has it.
3.24.
Okay.
Step 1 of troubleshooting Qgis is new user profile and reinstall the plugins.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'll give 3.24 a go afterwards. But that was the first question I just wanted to ask. Yeah, then going back to my question, that question's answered. So yeah, I kind of, I've used ArcGIS to do this so far. And I'll be very honest, I don't know the ins and outs of how the algorithm works behind. So I'm very keen to just ask everybody who has the expertise on this call. So I noticed within the Orfeo Toolbox, you have the PanSharpening and the bundle to perfect sensor. And from what I've read online and tried to understand about this error that I'm getting with the fact that they don't occupy the same physical space within the PanSharpening aspect, was because it's taken the central value of, I think it was the top right pixel, but because those pixels are different between the panchromatic and the multispectral, they'll class them as not occupying the same physical space, and that's why I believe you use this bundle to perfect sensor option. But I'd be really interested to see if I've understood that correctly, and if this is the most appropriate way to actually PanSharpen using this bundle to perfect sensor.
That sounds like one for Admire.
Yeah, I was about to ask if Admire's in the room, because I think he's the resident expert on these toolkits.
Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't really used the Orfeo one to offer some definitive answer on that. But I'll probably we have to look and see what the algorithm is actually calculating those values and what the documentation is specifying. I'll just quickly take a look whilst other people are talking and just come back with an answer.
There's probably more than one way to accomplish things, especially in the open source world. It ends up being a bit fragmented on some levels. So, I mean, I know Udall, I think, has a pan-sharpening process, I think. I'm not even sure how that one works as well.
And grass
the Judo
grass
one's,
also does have one.
yeah. The Judo one should be right there in the processing toolbox. So if you just search for pan in the processing toolbox, you'll see the Judo one.
Yeah,
and the grass one should also be there.
I'd seen you could have it here.
Yeah, but if you search in the list on the processing toolbox on the right where it says search, and just type pan there. Or rather type pan rather than...
Okay.
So you've got a bunch of options there, right? That one is the one that GDAL ships, which is a Python script on command line tool, which you could use independently of QGIS as well. And then as Maya mentions, you can see under grass there, you've got a couple of, or you've got that one under imagery, PanSharpen.
Brilliant. So I've got some good, this is fantastic. Thank you for your help, because I can definitely go and explore some of these different options. I'm going to actually try and close this for now, just to remove it. Then I guess the next sort of question is, as I say, that particular session of trying to create a PanSharpen image is taking quite a while. And the previous one took about 1 hour and 15 minutes to bring in a PanSharpen image. And I had some errors where the images were so large that they actually, because of data storage, they wouldn't actually operate or run. So I just wondered how you can overcome these aspects, because I know, like, for example, if I do a ArcGIS PanSharpen, almost in like milliseconds, you get this PanSharpen image that appears within the window. And to make it viable to use this, long term, I just wanted to understand maybe if I'm doing something different, or like there's another way to do it to reduce the time it takes to PanSharpen.
So some software will do like a virtual process where they're actually just like on the fly render the pixels, and it sounds like maybe that's what you were getting on the other package you were using. And then others will do like a file-to-file process, like what the OTB is trying to do. It's trying to write a new copy of the data set that you started with, but with PanSharpening applied. And so that's going to probably account for the use of the disk space. And Maya, you wanted to jump in on something?
Yes, I wanted to mention that in terms of a lot of processing with large data sets, I've always realized that if you use the grass tools, they tend to work better. And also if you natively use the grass, because grass has got an advantage where if you start up grass, you can set up a whole bunch of different defaults for memory optimizations. And it's quite very powerful in terms of analyzing large data sets as well. So if you are in the processing itself, you could basically try to set up the processing optimizations, which is in your settings to see how many processors you're running and all those different options that are available, just to see if it speeds up the processing itself.
I'm struggling to hear a little bit, I think.
Yes, so let me translate for him. He's saying that you can go and look in the processing toolbox options, and there are some options there about the multitasking. It's called max threads is the one. So you click on the little spanner on the right on the toolbar. Yeah. And then you click on the general, right where you are there on the, go back to processing.
Apologies.
General there, and then you see max threads is currently set to 6 on your computer. And I don't know what kind of a computer you have, but if you've got more processing capacity on your computer, you could up that number, and that if the algorithm supports multi-threaded processing, it will essentially run more jobs at the same time.
Okay.
Maya, was that the option you were referring to, or was there another one as well?
Yes, that's the option I was referring to. I don't know if the ones that are in settings, and then you go to your, what's that? Is it the general? Oh no, it's the rendering. Sorry, no. So that's the one.
Okay.
The other one is just for post rendering.
And then Penny, the other thing that Admire was saying is that different algorithms process data in different ways. So Admire is saying he finds grass quite reliable because I believe that it's like taking a chunk of the data at a time and processing and writing it out and then taking the next chunk rather than trying to load the whole image in memory in one go. So you might want to just experiment with the different options to see if one of them is particularly crash prone. It may be just because it's trying to load the whole data set in one go. I did want to ask you a little bit about the source of the data and how big those they seem to draw quite slowly on your screen and so on. So could you tell us a little bit about what image sensor they come from and how big the images are?
Yeah, so this is a Worldview 2 image from Maxar Technologies. I think the data file size was about 8 gigabytes for this particular image. It's this one was quite small compared to some of them I could have put in. So I went for the smallest option I had. But yeah, the other thing I was quite interested to ask is I noticed if I turn the PanSharpen image off as well, I put the same image into ArcGIS just for comparison purposes. I just wanted to ask a question. Is maybe if I focus on the same area in them both, that might be helpful.
I definitely need to download some elevator music for while things are loading. I don't think anyone wants to hear me sing.
Tim still owes us a song.
So. I'm practicing. Give me a few more months and I'll have it ready for you.
Okay, perfect. Hopefully, I think this will be fine now. Yeah, so this was even without the PanSharpen image. This is just the multispectral image that I've loaded in. And I just find that even when loaded in, some aspects of it, I think the quality is a little bit more coarse within Qgis.
I think it might be more that the histogram stretching algorithm being applied is different. So if you right-click on any white space around the toolbar area at the top.
Around here?
Yeah, just on the white space of a toolbar, just a little bit down on one of the toolbars, but not on an icon, just on, yeah. And then add the rest toolbar, what's it called? Raster toolbar. So it's almost down at the bottom. It's like 5 or 6 up from the bottom.
Okay.
There you go. And then you might want to drag it over to the end of the second row toolbar, just so that it doesn't consume so much space. So each of the toolbars has a little drag handle. If you that new toolbar that just arrived there, if you just go on the left, there's like a little stippled block on the left of it, more left, all the way to the left. Yeah. You can grab it and then just put it. Then you're not using up so much real estate. So that toolbar has got this histogram stretch options there. So if you hold your mouse on each one, you can see that it does. For example, that one does. I can just explain a little bit that basically the color space that's mapped onto the pixels can be adjusted so that the full range of colors of RGB, for example, is used in the scene that you see on the screen rather than across the whole data set. If that makes sense. So you can just experimentally just try click each one and see what they do. Almost that would probably not cause too much problems.
So this is similar.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, is this similar to having within ArcGIS you have like percent clip, standard deviation, and you can make these changes? I think it's.
I think it's similar. I actually don't. I think it's about like 20 years ago that I last used an ArcGIS something or other. So I don't know exactly what tools they have, but basically these ones are not using standard deviation. They're just using the either in the raster options, you've got an option to say that you want to clip the values of the raster to the like the 98th percentile range, whatever. That's to remove outlying pixels. Let's say, for example, you have one incredibly bright pixel on the scene, and then it basically makes all the other pixels look dark in comparison to it. You can say, well, you want to sort of remove these outlier highly bright or highly dark values, and then it basically makes all the other pixels a little bit more, gives them more color space to render their values in. So I don't know if you already, just by experimenting, you've been able to see any difference that improves it for you, or
yeah, I can see. I think it's going to slow up a minute now, but maybe. Yeah, there was definitely a difference. So thank you very much. That's hugely helpful as well.
And there's more icons on that toolbar where you can change the brightness levels and contrast and things. So you might want to just experiment around with those to get them. You know.
Can you do similar between the symbology? You could do similar maybe with adjusting.
You can also manipulate it there, yeah. So if you open that dialog again, the one that you just had open, it will help to explain a little bit what I'm talking about with the histogram stretching. So I'll just give it a minute to contemplate life. It's funny that it opened so quickly the first time and then
yeah.
Oh dear. Okay, that's
live demos work every time.
Okay, I can try and open it back up again.
Yeah, and that's also a reason to try and use the latest version of Qgis, because we're always, doing bug fixes. Our developers, intrepid developers, are always doing bug fixing on the software. So if it crashes on 3.16, it might not on 3.24. And there are a couple other tips we could give you on making the rendering a bit faster, but it might use up more disk space, which sounds like it might be a problem on your computer.
I think almost any technology is a matter of managing trade-offs. And one of the challenges is that like proprietary software kind of makes that decision for you on how they want to manage it. And open source tends to be a bit more unopinionated, which also kind of makes it challenging to use sometimes.
So if you go back to that layer property that you've got there, the one, do one that's visible there. Then you can see that for each band, so you understand the construction of a visual spectrum images in these three bands, red, green, and blue.
Yeah.
And you can see that in those bands, the actual values in the data only range from 44 to 173, for example, in the red band. So what would normally happen is that if you do a direct mapping, the value of 0 would get like most red, and the value of 255, or the other way around, would be like least red and most red. But that means that your color space is only occupying like half of the actual numerical range of 0 to 255. The red gets allocated. And so that everything will appear a bit more muted. But if you actually say, well, allocate the whole color space to that range, then all colors will sort of pop out a bit more. And that's basically what that tool lets you do, is manipulate like what that mapping is. Yeah. So for example, if you do that, it will now stretch the colors across the whole range, but you don't actually have data across the whole range. Then you're basically assigning red colors to data that isn't in your image. So you can play around with those color mappings to just assign more of the color space to what's actually in your image or not. I hope that vaguely makes sense. Charlie might be able to explain it in a more lucid way if mine wasn't clear.
That's really helpful.
Toggle slider, make it pretty.
Yeah.
That's super helpful. Thank you. In terms of I know you mentioned earlier about the time to do these things, and I think you were talking about the fact that you don't have to save. And I know you can choose to save to file or save to a temporary file. Mm-hmm. Is it quicker to save to a temporary file, or the best thing to do is to try and use grass? I gather from the discussion.
Yes, so that is a different thing. So what I was trying to explain is that some raster processing toolkits like Erdus Imagine used to be one. I don't know which other ones do it. They work on the principle that they don't alter the original data. They create an algorithm, and they apply the algorithm to the data on the fly. So you keep the single source data set, and then you create these small little, basically little XML text files that say how the pixels should be transformed, even between two adjacent images or what have you. And then it's got very well optimized algorithm for doing those processing on the fly as it's drawing it on the screen. Whereas other tools, like most of probably what we've got in Qgis and the associated tools, they work on a file-to-file basis. So you start off with one file, you say, I want to transform this, I want to do the PanSharpen, for example, and we'll say, okay, we're going to do that, and we'll write a new file out, and then that file will occupy the space of one of the original of your pan chromatic layer, for example, because it's a whole new data set that you're creating. So the advantage of the former method is that you save a lot on disk space, but the disadvantage is you do a lot of processing every time you want to display anything on the screen. And the advantage of the second way is that you don't have to process the data as you're displaying it. It's just really just drawing whatever the absolute values in the data are, but you need to store extra information on the disk. If anyone knows of any on-the-fly calculation, I think the virtual rasters are probably the best example of where this on-the-fly can be done. So, but I don't know if...
Yeah, that was my suggestion.
VRTs. Let me have a look and see if you can do it as a VRT.
VRTs are more like I would say more like a calculator, like almost like a raster calculator type of thing, where it's just like you set the way that you want the values to overlay. I don't think it's going to add, like, because PanSharpening, you'd have to do alignment and you'd have to do segmentation and stuff, I think, as part of the algorithm. And I don't think that kind of logic is handled by VRTs.
Yeah.
I know Penny's image is quite large. Sorry if there's a bit of an echo there. But could we possibly show her, for example, how to use the grass tool to do that? So how would be best to do it? Maybe we can clip a piece of the image out.
Yeah, I was going to say let's clip something out.
I was about to say that. So clip the same piece of both images out and try and run it on that small piece.
Yeah. So it looks like that bay there is what you're interested in, Penny.
Yeah, we can. I'm happy to take this area.
Yeah, if you just do a little clip on that. You know how to use the clip tool in Qgis? Yeah, if you do the one below even, then it will do it by, you can just draw a box.
I can use this one?
The one below that, yeah.
That one. Yeah, I'm quite new to using Qgis, so...
No problem.
Those are the vector tools, so you'll need to go further down in the raster extraction. Excuse Tim's
tool, but just one
tiny text
down
allergy.
Just close this one, Penny, and then just go look a little bit further down because you're in the vector group, as Charlie's pointing out. So yeah, clip raster by extent is the first one in that list of raster. Not that one. Not that one.
Not this one.
Go up.
Yeah, the middle. Yeah,
there you go.
That's it. Got it.
Cool. It'll take a while.
You got 16 people up, down, left.
Can
you need suggestions from the chat on on other tools they could be using? So here you could just use this temporary file because it's going to just store it somewhere in your temporary folder. That's quite fine for now.
Perfect. Is there a way to mimic that to do the exact same area? You can just change this now to panchromatic and rerun it. Okay.
So if you go look at the properties of one of those new layers, you probably will find that the color space now is even smaller than you had it before. So like, okay, that's a single band one. Just do these.
Okay, yeah, much smaller.
Yeah, so everything's going to look kind of like dull and gray. Then if you stretch to the min-max, you see the contrast enhancement below is already set to stretch to min-max. And that's basically what that does. Is it says assign the red space across. So what you've done now is not the way that I would have done. I would have left it like it was, because this will make it darker. The other way makes it lighter, if that makes sense. So if you want to get the originals back, you can just, if you open that little min-max value settings group there. No, not
if you click out and then click back in, would it reset it? No.
If you haven't pressed apply, yes, it will do. You can just cancel and then come back in again.
I see in the chat, Mika has a comment. Do you want to just voice those for us?
Yeah, sure. Maybe a couple comments if I have a few minutes.
Go for it.
Okay, first of all, there are many different pan-sharpening algorithms. And most software that implements pan-sharpening does what you might call a naive algorithm, where it takes the RGB, only three RGB bands, changes them to what's called HIS space, which is hue, intensity, and saturation, instead of RGB. Then the saturation is very much like the grayscale pan image. So then you can simply downscale the intensity band, the I band, and then go backwards and recombine the three of them at the higher resolution. So this is very simple, very quick. I think that's what ArcGIS uses. And I think that GRASS, the algorithm in GRASS, uses that same naive approach. It's very simple and quick to do, but it changes somewhat the original coloring. Now, in your case, with trying to identify whales stranded on a beach, maybe it doesn't make any difference. Maybe the actual true original RGB colors aren't that important. So maybe this algorithm is fine. In any case, Orfeo Toolboox, I believe, implements a much better algorithm where it stays much more reliably to the original coloring. And that's why it's so slow.
Okay, yeah, that's really helpful. I think for whales, we will be interested in the RGB colors, and so yeah, maybe if that's the case, probably using something like Orfeo Toolbox will possibly be the best option.
Okay. Now, the other thing that came to mind, how to make Orfeo Toolbox work a little quicker, since you're really only interested in the coastline, you might be able to set all of the ocean areas and all of the inland areas to null value. You'd need a big mask, set everything else to null, keep the actual colors only on the strip along the coast, and then the whole business would be quicker.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. Thank you very much.
I'm so glad I got out of bed. That was awesome.
That's hugely helpful.
It's 3 in the afternoon.
Just out of curiosity, one of my other questions was actually about comparison between the ArcGIS and the Qgis algorithms. And typically, the ones we tend to use within ArcGIS are Schmidt, potentially ESRI sometimes, or the Brovey algorithms. Or in comparison to the RCS, the Bayesian, or the LMVM that you get within the OTB, is any of those more comparable than the other? Do you know?
Well, the best way to learn is to try them out, see?
Keep playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I've been having a quick look and trying to change them and use different ones and compare. So I can definitely keep playing and having a look. There was one other thing I noticed as well in the description of how these algorithms work. And one of them was saying that within, I forget which, I think it was within the bundle to perfect raster, if you use it and you use player disimagery. So in this example, we're using Maxwell, but if you use player disimagery, because it doesn't have sensor models, it automatically implements, I think it was called PHS mode. And I just wondered how you could check that that is automatically done. And if it isn't automatically done, how you can manually do it. I don't know if anybody has ever come across that before.
Not really sure. Could you repeat again?
Yeah, sure. So I think I was having a look, and if you use this perfected bundle raster, if you were using a Pleiades imagery, so that's a different satellite from Airbus in comparison to this Maxar image, some of the algorithms work using sensor models, but it said that if you use Pleiades imagery, because these satellites don't have sensor models, it actually converts and automatically detects that you've used a Pleiades image. And it then uses algorithms based on something called a PHS model. Now, I don't really know what that is or how it works, but I just wondered in here whether that's something you would notice, and if it didn't automatically detect, how you would be able to change that.
I don't know. Don't know how to answer that.
Okay, that's okay. I think, to be honest, those were my main questions. So I think, yeah, it was how you could reduce the time. It was the comparison between some of the, like the Graham Schmidt, and I think we've gone through that. And then it was that final question, PHS, how that would compare, how you could automatically detect that. Yeah, so I think that they were mainly all my questions, but I guess if anybody has anything that I've not thought about, any like comments or suggestions, then I would be hugely happy to hear. Otherwise, I'm very grateful for everybody's time and advice to help with my questions so far.
Penny, there have been some other open day talks. Amy can help me remember the name of the one from a few months back, which was on using AI, object recognition. Can you remember? It was AI as a service.
I do remember, and they were identifying cars.
Yeah.
I even remember the speaker. I can put you into contact with him.
So you might want to look at other approaches as well to see. I mean, AI is overhyped, I think, a lot of the time, and it may be just that you're entering into a new buzzword salad by going down the AI route. But at the same time, there may be some interesting and useful tools that are out there. I played around with another one, like again, the name's escaping me. I'll have to go and look what it was. But I was looking at trying to identify elephants using AI, and it was a bit difficult actually to get it to do anything useful. But maybe the technology's moved on in 3 years since I've tried that. But there definitely are other sort of approaches you might take for this sort of object recognition, which is essentially what you're trying to do. And you might also just try your own, like playing around with, for example, I noticed in the image you had when it was actually in monochrome mode, you could see the white shape of the whale kind of well, and you might be able to get more contrast by actually ditching a bunch of the extra information in the image and trying to do like an edge detection filter and things like that. But
can I pull in a couple of the questions and comments from the live chat, and then we'll do another round with the people who are in the room, maybe admire, or a whole bunch of the people who are here who do this and do look at images all the time, have some other advice, and perhaps we can practically, if it doesn't crash your QGIS, try and see if that grass tool works. So first, let's look at the chat. So the first comment is from FMH. The question is, can we import a GDB file programmatically instead of using QGIS desktop, convert the data into proper format, and then store it in SQL, which can be used later for hosting and publishing?
Okay, I think we're on a wild tangent from the original topic.
It's a bit of a wild tangent. So let's...
I don't know the last format you mentioned. What was it called? H?
So it would store it in SQL and then to be used for later hosting and publishing.
Well, yes, use the OGR to OGR tools basically should get you going. Unless Charlie, did I miss something? Was it the file geodatabase that they were talking about? Or
yeah, GDB file.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Admire. Answer, yes.
Yes. So ideally, probably what we can ask the person who asked this, can they natively load the file into QGIS using drag and drop, or the other methods that are available in QGIS? If the answer is yes, then automatically it can be done programmatically because all those tools are available in QGIS that they can use programmatically as well.
I'm
Okay.
going to just
I'll
repeat
bring
your
us back
answer, Maya, because your audio is not great. So he's basically saying if you're able to open a data set in QGIS by dragging and dropping it into QGIS, then you've got a very good chance that you can also automate it using the GDAL command line tools, or in this case, the OGR command line tools to convert it from one format to another in OGR.
Cool. And then Ethan Snyder says how we were in your project, Penny, and we were having a look at the color bands. And Ethan asks, how is the green channel over 255? Is that an issue?
Would you like me to reshare that screen?
That would be great. Tim, for some reason, we suddenly can't hear you.
That's because my thumb is pressed on the mute button.
There we go.
You do get so a little bit more on the theory, and Misha sounds like he's far more conversant in these things than I am. So please correct me anywhere I go out of tune here, Misha. But basically, when you're looking at an image like this, you're looking at an like a 20. Well, it's got 24 bits, 8-bit per band, which basically means that each color can have a number between 0 to 255 assigned to that color, to represent the full range of no red to maximum red, no green to maximum green, and so on. But you can also have your image provided as 10-bit or other bit values, which allows much more color space per each of the red, green, and blue colors. And so it could be, but I don't know if this is the case. It could be that you've got something in a different format. If you look on the information tab, you should get a 16-bit imagery there, it looks like. And if you scroll down a little bit, so you've got 8 bands, and each one's at 16 bits. So 16 bits, it means that you can represent 0 through to 65,535 in the range of values. So yours is basically only using a little bit of that whole 16-bit space. So that's, Ethan, I think that's what's going on there, is that she's got just a higher bit image than the typical 8-bit RGB TIFF that you'd normally see.
Sounds exactly right to me.
Thank you, gentlemen. Alrighty, shall we hop in and try and just practically do that with the grass tool and see what we get?
Yeah, I'll pop that back up then. Bear with me 1 second.
Are you able to share the data, Penny? Because we can play at home as well, and then we can share whatever we come up with.
Unfortunately not, I'm
Okay.
afraid. Yeah, Max, the imagery from Maxwell Technologies is you purchase it from a commercial company on a case-by-case basis. So unfortunately, we can't share that.
No problem.
I'm afraid. Shall I try the grass tool on the clipped imagery rather than?
Yeah, but
Yes.
maybe we want to try. Maybe we can walk you through Misha's proposal, which I think was a great idea, is to just mask your image first. We can show you the workflow just with your small image.
Yeah.
Misha, maybe we could just capture the coastline and buffer it by like 100 meters.
Yeah, sure. Before we jump into this, though, how many bands is this Maxstar image?
So it's an 8-band image.
What?
8 bands.
8 bands.
Okay, so you understand that the ARC algorithm and also the algorithm in GRASS only use 3 bands, RGB only.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Orfeo Toolboox, and maybe I don't want to throw a cog in the works, but the algorithms in R can use multiple bands. It's a different algorithm altogether, both Orfeo Toolboox and the procedure in R. So if you need all the bands, then you'll have to move away from both GRASS and ARC.
And that's using Orfeo Toolbox through R?
No, just either Orfeo Toolbox
Okay.
or R.
Yeah, actually, I noticed when you, for example, in here, if I go on this pan-sharpened image from in Arc, in the symbology, you only get the limited bands, and then you're correct. When I go on this pan-sharpened image here, I definitely had the option to go on here. Yeah, I had all 8 bands still available, which was really, really cool.
You could also, if the tool doesn't know how to deal with more than 3 bands, you could also extract just the 3 bands that you want to use into a new image. I just want to make you aware that we only have 10 minutes left in the session, so we probably have to do some speed helping. But we're going to show you the buffer. And
we can, of course, have another session at some point. That's no problem. Or I can leave this meeting open and we jump into the next session, and whoever's in the room can help Penny.
We do have an open chat in 3 hours' time where we can, there's no agenda. We can just...
literally there's nothing for the open chat, so in 3 hours if we want to join and do some more problem solving on this, I'm happy for that to be the agenda.
Okay, perfect. Well, I think if we've got 8 minutes, I'm happy to try and do the mask on this very small area.
Yeah, so if you speed digitize, just do very roughly, just create a new line layer. You know how to do in the layer menu, just say create layer, and then new whichever format you like. You can just even make a scratch layer, and then give it the type should be line. You can call it coast, something like that. Yeah, and you don't need to store any other information on it, so you can just make it like an empty layer, and then you start editing it. And then you use the digitizing tool and just very roughly go around the edge of that little peninsula there. Got up on the screen.
Same looking symbol, different place.
Yeah,
that's the one.
Yeah, it's different. I'm completely new to using Qgis, so
just do it very roughly, just to get a sense of the workflow, and you can go later. So just sort of start on, and don't try to do the whole map. Just that peninsula that sticks out. Looks like a genie coming out of a bottle or something.
Okay. And then just go.
Are you digitizing? I can't see if something's coming on the screen or not.
So I have there's a line starting here and it's gone around.
Yeah, no. So I was saying that because you were interested in that little curve, or did you want to do the whole coastline?
Oh yeah, I can just focus on this area.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know what the scale we're at is. But,
is there a way to? Okay, I think I've restarted it.
Yeah. So just to sort of do it as if you were following the coast, like trying to digitize on the line of the coast.
In the water, or you want me to do?
Well, on where the water meets the land.
Okay.
So what Misha's proposing is you basically just have a line along the coastline.
Okay, that
and
makes
then
sense.
we can make a buffer like 100 meters on either side of the line. Yeah, exactly like that. So just very roughly all the way around. Perfect. And then you can right click to end it. And then just save your edits. Yeah. And then if you want a power user tip, you can go in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen or press Control K and just type buffer. Just type buffer in there, and then we'll give you a shortcut to finding the buffer, and then you can click on that. And then just say, okay, now the problem is your layers in degrees. So we should have said to you, capture it in a coordinate reference system, which is meters based. But for the academic purposes, we will just change that to a very small number, like 0.0, with like 0.5 zeros and then 5.
It looks like it's in UTM.
Oh, is it in UTM? It says it's in degrees.
No, I think the map frame is in UTM,
Yeah,
but the layer is in degrees.
Oh. I forgot to mention.
I think that'll be fine though.
Yeah, I think what is the 100 meters? I think you need a couple more zeros in there before the 5.
I can change the map layer to beforehand, or is that not useful?
Yeah, you can do that beforehand when you're creating it. You should put it in UTM as well. Okay. I think now you have too many 5s. So, too many zeros. Just take something. 4
I
zeros.
didn't need to add anything else.
I can't remember what 100 meters is. I think it's 5 places or something like that. If you say okay,
Depends where you are.
right, and you'll soon find out. Okay.
That looks reasonable.
Okay. And so now you could use that as a mask. So if you go in the raster menu, there's a mask option. Or if you just type mask in the processing toolbox. Or you can do, you can say clip raster by mask layer. It's the third item down from the top. One more up? No, not that one. Just press escape. It's not that one.
Okay, sorry.
That one there, yeah.
So would you do this for each of the clipped extents? Okay.
Yeah. And then if you close there, you've got a new data set now, which is got no data in everywhere where it's not around the coast.
Cool.
That's probably where we'll run out of road in our time schedule. But I hope you get the idea of Misha's proposing. Then you're only analyzing. I mean, it's analyzing the whole image, but it does not really do any work for those no data pixels. So you can just skip past those and focus on the bits which are of value to you.
You can also right-click in the processing menu and just say batch process, and then do all your loaded layers or something like that. You can do 6 rasters at once, kind of thing. It's faster.
Penny, will you check in on a future open day and show us how what you made? It would be lovely to see the results of your studies.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. I'm very, very grateful for everybody's time today. Just a huge thank you to everybody that's given advice and contributed. Thank you.
And if you want
to see people doing real world stuff,
see what you get and come back to us in the open chat, please feel free to do so. That would be awesome. Again, the open chat is the last session of the day. Anyone is welcome. We can chat about whatever. There is no schedule, so please feel free to join that. And Penny, we'd like to see you again there. And of course, as Tim says, as your project develops, please let us know what happens. I think it would be amazing to see how it comes on.
I would be excited. Thanks, Amy. Thank you, Tim.
There are a couple of live comments saying shout out to Penny. You're doing great work.
Yeah, save the whales. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Clapping hands, all the likes. So thank you, Penny. It's absolutely fascinating, and we hope we can help you further.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Right. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. Thank you, everyone in the room. Please, the next session is in 1 minute. So hop over to the next link, and I will be pleased to see you all there. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Bye.